Hello, I'm Amy Stevenson, and this is The Human CEO. In each episode, we'll be meeting with CEOs and senior leaders to understand their approach to leadership, the challenges they faced, and how they overcame them. We'll also be asking what they feel it takes to be a great leader.
That was the bit that I learned very early on, was the secret really, is how do you get different departments who all see their roles differently to work together as a team to one common goal, and how your communication and your persuasive skills have to adapt. That first 12 months I was looking back, I could have quite easily failed. Thankfully I didn't.
Welcome to The Human CEO. I'm your host Amy Stevenson, and today I'm joined by Nigel Hurley. Nigel is the CEO of CarShop, the UK's leading used car supermarket. After beginning his career as a trainee sales executive in the automotive industry, Nigel learnt the ropes and worked hard to achieve a leadership role. Nigel joins us today to share his insight as a leader and a human CEO. So thank you for joining us today, Nigel. It's great to have you with us.
Amy, thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So can you tell us a little bit about CarShop as an organisation and what you're working towards, please?
Yeah, of course. Well, CarShop is owned by the Sytner Group, which some people may be familiar with. And ultimately, we're owned by a company called Penske Automotive Group, which is an American-owned company. We are an omni-channel used car retailer. So we operate fully online if you want to buy a car or, come and see it in store, or a combination of everything. So a true omni-channel used car retailer. We've currently got 13 locations across the UK. We open up our 13th location in Wolverhampton on the 1st of October. And we've got a couple more to open up before the end of the year. So we'll be up to 15 locations in the UK. We employ about 1,600 colleagues in the team, and we specialise in vehicles typically between 2 and 8 years old, all makes, price range, sort of sub 20, but we do have cars, below 30 as well. We currently stock around 8,000 cars online, and we'll sell around 60,000 cars a year. So wow. A proper used car, they call them supermarkets. I don't like to call them supermarkets, but superstores. And we've got, in a typical superstore, our biggest superstore, we've got 2 really big ones, but one in Wakefield, one in Northampton. Mm-hmm. They will typically stock around 800 cars on their forecourt, and they'll sell around 100 cars a month. So pretty serious operations, really. I suppose the most exciting project that we've just launched in May of this year, which was what we've learned out of our lockdown period, really, with COVID, was the number of customers that were willing to buy a used car in particular, online without having driven the car in the first place, or been to see the car and traditionally kicked its tyres and walked around the car. So we opened, we were inspired by what we learned last year. And so we opened up our first, what we call an express store in May of this year in Leicester. And if I describe to you what we would normally have done, then I'll explain to you what we did with Leicester Express. But typically, our last store that we opened, our big store, was in Nottingham. And that's a store that sat on 6 acres of land, huge facility with a rent and rates around £1.1 million a year, employing 75 people. And this Leicester Express store that we've opened is 15,000 square feet of building on less than an acre, with no cars in stock and 10 people working from the store. And it's basically an online digital showroom where customers buy a car online or come and see us in store. Then we help them buy a car online, and then we bring the car to the location for a handover. And that's been so successful. We're about to open our second one in Leighton Buzzard on the 15th of this month.
Fantastic. And was that born purely off the back of COVID and lockdown?
Totally. Yeah, totally. Because I think had we not been forced to behave very differently through that period, I think we would have quite happily done what we always did. Because what we always did was successful. But sometimes, when you're pushed into a corner where you have to think differently, different solutions come out, and it inspires you to go in slightly different directions. So I think going forward, what was our original growth plan that we'd written a sort of 3 to 4 year growth plan 18 months ago. I think the shape of that has now changed. Whereas it would have been, a series of what we'd class now as a superstore.
Yeah.
We've now got a combination of superstores and express stores, which we'll use as a footprint across the UK.
Fantastic. And so as the leader of that kind of organisation that's really, diversified throughout COVID, what kind of challenges are you up against at the moment as a leader?
Well, as a leader, I suppose it's, we have the challenges around what's happening in the environment that you're working in. So if I think about the used car market and the motor trade today, the biggest challenges we face is the lack of new car supply, which has a direct knock-on effect on the lack of part exchanges and used cars in the market. So right here, right now, the challenges that we're facing, if you think about the last 18 months, it's been a whirlwind of change in the used car market. So we've gone through COVID and all that brought to operating, a business. Yeah. And then we've moved into a scenario where there are a lack of used cars coming into the market. So the challenge facing us today is acquiring sufficient stock to supply the demand that's out there in front of us. Okay. And I suppose the danger of not doing so is that you strangle your growth aspirations because, it's easy to buy a facility and it's easy to employ people generally. Mm-hmm. What's sort of not so easy is to locate the right stock that you want to then sell to your customers. So right here, right now, it's about acquisition, but every day, I suppose, regardless of, those kind of things that happen from time to time, like COVID and the used car market, the challenges we face are usually around about people. Okay. It's normally around, recruiting, retaining talent within the team, and getting the best out, helping those people to be the best they can be and getting the best out of them. So that's an ongoing, never-ending challenge, I suppose.
Yeah, and I suppose while the business is changing, I suppose your people strategy has changed. If you don't need as many people on the forecourts because the forecourts don't exist because you've done the express model. That's we haven't necessarily shrunken the number of people that are employed. I suppose what we have done with the new stores in Express, we've employed less people, so we definitely, from a growth point of view, instead of employing 70, we've employed 10, and when we open our Leighton Buzzard store, that'll add a further 6. So it's definitely changed the shape of forward growth in terms of the number of people we need. But I think the hardest thing we've had to manage through, and again, COVID brought this, is how we interact with our customers in an online environment. Things like what we're doing today, talking on Zoom, is a great example of, I don't think, had we gone through COVID, I don't think as a manager, I would have spent any time on Zoom. I would have been quite happily jumping in my car at, silly o'clock in the morning and, spending a lot of time on the road, moving between stores. But I think what we've had to adapt to is how do we communicate with our customers in a different way, in a different environment. The best example I can give of that is finance products. So when you're buying a car and nearly half of our customers fund their car with us, it's explaining the technicalities, the funding possibilities that are available to them. Mm-hmm. And typically that would have been done over the phone or face-to-face in a showroom. Yeah. Whereas now, because we've got Zoom and Teams, we've had to adapt to that. But more so, we've had to help our customers adapt to that, because some of our customers that we talk to have never used Zoom, never used Teams. So we take it for granted that we've got to adapt, but we've got to help our customers adapt at the same time so they can interact with us in a more fruitful experience kind of way. Yeah. I suppose it increases the convenience as well, doesn't it? That you're not waiting for them to be able to get into a showroom, so your transactions can be quicker.
Totally. And again, that's been a spin-off of where we've been. And I think, if I look back at one of the criticisms that I could label on ourselves in terms of the old way in which we did business, was we pride ourselves in being able to supply you the same car on the same day. So if you came and bought a car from us in the morning, the same day you could have that car on your drive at home, which sounds brilliant, doesn't it? And it is. Uh-huh. The downside is we have so many elements of paperwork that has to be processed that can take 4 hours. Right. And I think therefore it's the experience in store can be quite fatiguing. However, now we're operating in a different way. We can break down some of that admin and some of that work online before the customer visits the showroom. And if you take our express store in Leicester, everything is done for you before you turn up to the store. And you turn up to the store with the only one thing to do, and that is to pay. So you don't pay, but you do everything apart from pay. And then at the point where you see the car, you pay and you drive away, and you're out the showroom within 45 minutes, which is a nice experience.
Yeah. That's brilliant. And so in terms of your journey into leadership then, so I was having a little look at looking at your LinkedIn profile. So from Chesterfield boys straight into the automotive industry, pretty much. Was the plan to have a leadership role? Is that where you were headed?
No, I want to be a footballer, and that was my dream, and I wasn't good enough. So I remember going for people, maybe even yourself included, you won't remember this, but back in 1983 was when I was at the point where I could have left school. I was 16 years old, and I was at that point where I was going to leave school, or I was going to go and study A-levels, and I really wanted to leave school at the time. And my mum and dad said, look, if you can get yourself a good job, you can leave. And if you don't get yourself a good job, you're going back to school. And I wanted to be a footballer. And I'd seen on Calendar News, which is a good local Yorkshire TV programme, that they were doing a YTS programme at the job centre for boys that could study to be an apprentice for Chesterfield Football Club. And so I went along, and I didn't. My name wasn't on the list. But while I was there was a wonderful woman that was in the job centre that sort of helped me apply for a job as a trainee car salesperson at a local VW and Audi business in Chesterfield. And I was fortunate enough to get that job at 16. And I joined as a trainee car salesperson back in August of 83. And the trainee, I suppose I have to tell you what that job really meant. On paper, it was a trainee car salesperson, but the truth of it was I was valeting cars every day. I was out on the pitch every morning, cleaning the pitch cars. Then one salesman would say to me, while you're out there, will you clean my car? And then, of course, everybody else would get jealous that their car's getting clean. So I ended up spending most of my time, probably 80% of my working day, cleaning cars, which I actually did quite enjoy. And it was a good grounding for me, I think, at the time. But yeah, long time ago.
Right. And so how did it happen that you became CEO? Was it just that you had the passion for the industry? People followed you?
No, I think looking back, I suppose at my career, I never saw CEO as being something that was probably something that was in me. At the time when I joined the motor industry, I suppose my first goal was to be a salesperson. You sort of take your steps, don't you? And I think there was a point when I was a salesperson. So my first goal was, can I enjoy this industry? Can I actually make it to being a salesperson? And then I think when I eventually did that, and I got the chance to start selling cars properly 18 months after I started. So I had an 18-month sort of trainee program. And then I think after about a couple of years of selling, when I realised that I enjoyed it and I enjoyed the motor trade, I suppose then you start to set your dreams start to sort of get formed. And I think ultimately being the head of business, they used to call them dealer principals at the time, but being the head of business, which was the store manager, was the vision and the goal that I think at that point I remember thinking one day I'd love to run a business, and I got the opportunity to do that. I was very lucky, actually. I think when people look back in their careers, you can count luck and opportunity, and I suppose an ambition. You put those things together, and sometimes you get the right opportunity at the right time. But I was very lucky at the age of 27 to be able to run my first business in Nottingham, which was a Land Rover and Porsche dealership. And I think it was a matter of right time, right place, and too soon. I had all those things together, and I had a steep learning curve for about 12 months where I really wasn't very good at the job. Probably thought I was better than I really was, and I had to learn from my mistakes and realise, how to run a business. It wasn't necessarily about the sort of financial side of it. It was more about engaging different departments in a way that they felt comfortable working as a team together. And I think that was the bit that I learned very early on, was the secret really, is how do you get different departments who all see their roles differently to work together as a team to one common goal, and how your communication and your persuasive skills have to adapt. And I think that first 12 months, I was looking back, I could have quite easily failed. Thankfully, I didn't. And I think I went on from strength to strength from there, really. I sort of ran that Land Rover business for 5 years. And then I moved to a different organisation called Sytner Group back in 1999 to run their BMW dealership in Sheffield. And the motivation at the time really was about, we just got a young family. My daughter was 2. I was commuting to Nottingham every day. And that was getting me down. And I think I was right for a change, and BMW at the time really appealed to me. And I joined Sytner, ran their business for 2 years, and then they asked me to go and run their Leicester business, which was even worse than working in Nottingham, because I was now travelling even further than it was before. But I think that was a springboard into running the division, which again was a steep learning curve, because I had to look after 15 BMW and 15 mini sites, 2,200 employees, with a big responsibility. And again, first 12 months was a sink or swim kind of experience. And then I did that for 15 years. And then 2 years ago, got the opportunity to join CarShop, which again is still a Sytner business, but a different arm of the company. And it's very different. And I got the chance to be CEO of this team. And again, that's just brought, different challenges to the table. And 18 months, 2 years in, and still getting to grips with it, if I'm honest with you.
But still smiling.
But still always. You always can smile, yeah.
Brilliant. And so what characteristics would you say a great leader needs? Would you define a good leader in a particular way? Do you think there are specific characteristics?
Well, look, I'm probably thinking about other people when I describe, leadership, because that's where I suppose I draw my inspiration from, whether it's reading books or whether it's observing the people that you work with over time. And I think back to the people that got the best out of me, and the people that have got the worst out of me. And I suppose that helps you form how you want to behave, because I want, to get the best out of people around me. And I don't want to be somebody that one day they look back and think, well, he got the worst out of me. I couldn't, he never found the right ways to communicate with me or to make me feel as if I could contribute. So I suppose I'm consciously always trying to behave with the people that I work with like I want to be worked with myself, So I suppose it's, I think the kind of things that I've learned have worked for me has been how you communicate, how often you communicate, how you help others to grow in their own space, how you create an environment of learning where people feel comfortable to voice their honest opinions, whether they think you're going to like the answer or the outcome or not, but they feel comfortable that they can have an honest conversation with you that allows you to sort of stand back and work with them to either say, no, I don't agree with you, or to go, well, actually, I didn't see it that way, and I do agree with you, and maybe there's a different way. So I think, for me, when I think about leadership and I look at leaders who work with me and I've worked for and how I want to be myself, I suppose, it's good leaders create an environment where anybody can have a voice and the whole team can, consider the conversation that's taking place, and together, come up with a super plan as opposed to the plan of one person's, ideas in the mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in terms of, you mentioned briefly that you'd had experiences where somebody maybe hadn't got the best out of you and people where they had got the best out of you. Was there one experience or a piece of advice or something like that helped shape your own leadership style?
Well, in terms of negative or positive or both?
Yeah, but either or both.
Well, I did have my harshest experience, probably I think back to my very early days, where the manager that managed me at the time probably managed me in a way that was parent-child.
Okay.
And at the time I didn't realise it wasn't getting the best out of me, but it was getting a result out of me. And looking back, that's an experience that probably I look back and think, well, he probably could have got more out of me if he'd have treated me not in that parent-child kind of environment. And I suppose, I've worked for managers that have done the opposite of that, have actually almost, even though you're not equal, and you're in a position of hierarchy where you sit beneath these people, they communicate with you in a way where you feel you've got a voice, and therefore, and there's no right or wrong, and I think that allowed me to express myself in a different way and probably learn at the same time in a different way. So, without naming names, that's probably...
Yeah. No, we're not asking for names.
But again, I think I did read a book. I was encouraged to read a book I mean, I've read lots of books, but I was encouraged to read a specific book. And it was a book that almost changed the way I thought, and still does today. And I read the 7 Habits by Dr. Stephen Covey, and I must have read it, I don't know, I've probably read it 10 times, and I've listened to the audio probably 20 times. And every time I read it or listen to it, I get something more from it. But I found that book quite inspirational, both in terms of home life and work life. And allowed me to put things into perspective myself about, I think the bit in the book that there was 2 bits in the book that stand out for me in particular. There was one which was Begin with the End in Mind, where it talks about, imagine your own funeral and you're looking down on the people in the room, and within there you've got all your friends and your work colleagues and your family, and they each stand up and talk about you as a parent or as a work colleague or as a boss, and what kind of things do they say about you. And that makes you think about,
Absolutely.
how you want to be seen. And the other bit that sticks in my mind is a story about he's travelling on a train home from work, and this guy gets on the train at this train station, and his kids are being so unruly in the carriage, and he sat there thinking, I've got to say something. This guy's lost control of his kids, and his kids are causing so much trouble. And he says to this guy, he says, can you sort your kids out? They're causing mayhem in this carriage. And this guy says, I'm really sorry. I've just come from the hospital. Their mother's passed away, and I can't deal with it myself and the kids. And I had a complete shift of, emotion, reading that. And so did this guy. And I suppose what it teaches you is sometimes things aren't always what they seem.
Yeah.
And actually, you've got to seek to understand before you can understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's sort of those kind of things that, I get some inspiration from and help me think about how I want to shape my style at work.
Fantastic. It is a great book. It's a really great. I feel the same way about you do. You take something from it every time you read it, don't you?
Yeah.
And so is there a piece of advice that you would offer to someone that's looking to follow in your footsteps, that's either about to take that step up into a leadership role or is right at the start of their career, but has their sights on a CEO position?
I would say lay good foundations, integrity, honesty, have got to be absolutely, at the core of who you are. Because I think, a boss that has good integrity, that's got good morals, I think gets more out of people. So I think lay good foundations. Don't be impatient. Good things come to those that wait. Be ambitious, but don't be impatient. And it's a little bit like snakes and ladders. And I've seen people that have worked with me in the past that sometimes have jumped at what looked on the face of it like a ladder and ended up becoming a snake, and,
great analogy.
10 years later, they regret some of the sort of moves that they've made. So, pick your moves wisely, be patient, pick the right moves. And if you adopt a bit of a slow and steady kind of approach to your career, sometimes that can be more fruitful than, trying to get too far too quickly. Yeah.
I would agree. And so penultimate question, is there one leader, past or present, that you particularly admire? And if so, why?
Well, there's a guy whose book I read, Richard Branson, that after I'd read it, I want to go and work for him. So I suppose that tells you something, I suppose that's past and present. I've read Elon Musk's book, and I think that guy, is a phenomenon in terms of an individual. But I think that I'm realistic, really. I'm probably, the guy that I work for at the moment. Ultimately, I've got my boss in the UK, and then our boss in the US is an inspirational guy, and I put him up there with all the others. A guy called Roger Penske, who owns or is a major shareholder in Penske Automotive Group, and I get chance to sort of be in his circle from time to time, and I have to say he's probably up there with the people like, in my mind, Richard Branson, that inspires and leads and drives the business forward.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And so, final question then: what's on the cards for the next 6 to 12 months for CarShop?
Okay, thank you. Well, listen, I suppose, as I said earlier, we've got our 14th store opening up on the 15th of September, Leighton Buzzard Express, which will be a small facility that we've got down there. We open up Wolverhampton store on the 1st of October, at the same time as a Halifax Express in October. And then we opened Cheltenham Express in January, hopefully. And then we've got another 3 big stores that are due to open next year: Camberley, Derby and Stoke. And our growth plan really is to double in size between now and 2024. So
fantastic.
We'll sell 55,000 cars in a normal year. We're planning to sell 115,000 cars a year by 2024.
Wow. Well, I wish you the best of luck with it. Sounds like you're going to have your hands full.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you that. I'll take that look. Thank you. I think we'll probably need it, but that's the goal anyway. Hopefully, we'll get there. We've got a plan. We have a plan.
Yeah, absolutely, fantastic. Well, Nigel, I've really enjoyed speaking with you, so thank you for making the time.
Well, it's lovely to invite me on, and likewise, thank you, Amy.